Welcome to Brainwave, and today we are diving into one of the most wildest, most game changing events in history, the French Revolution. So, grab some popcorn or bread if they could afford it, because trust me, things are about to get intense. So, picture this that it's 14th of July 1789, and the city of Paris is buzzing with panic. We have King Louis XVI. Yeah, that guy living in luxuries at Versailles, okay? He had ordered troops to move into the city. But instead of getting scared and hiding, there were some 7,000 men and women who decided to fight back. They had formed a people's military, and what they did now was to fight they needed weapons. So they marched straight to Bastille. Bastille, the famous fortress prison. They marched into Bastille and they freed a huge number of prisoners. A huge number? Come on, only 7 prisoners. So, they did all of this, and that is why even today, 14th of July is celebrated as France's Independence Day. Okay, but why did people get so angry in the first place? Let's break it down into 3 main parts: political, social, and economical causes. We see the political causes. Now, France was ruled by an absolute monarch, the King Louis XVI. Now, this guy held all the powers in his hand, and he had a system known as the Estate General system. Now, in the Estate General system, there were 3 estates. We'll make a pyramid. We had the first estate, second estate, and the third estate. The first estate had all the clergy, priests, church people, everything. Second estate, all the noble, the lords, the kings, everything. But the third estate had everyone else. Like literally, from farmers to poor people to lawyers, everyone else came in the third estate. Now that was a really unfair part, okay, because the first and second estate were rich, powerful, and they paid no tax. But whereas on the other hand, the third estate, who made of 98% of the population, they had to pay taxes. They had to take the tax burden, and they were already poor. Talk about unfair. Now we have the social causes. The third estate did not only had to pay taxes, but they also had no privileges. They were already poor, struggling with the rising prices, and they were constantly treated as inferior. Lastly, we have the economical causes. Now, France was in a state of financial crisis, okay? They had a thing known as substantial crisis occur. Now, why did the substantial crisis occur? So, firstly, what they did was they were already helping 13 American colonies gain independence, which caused them a debt of 2 billion livres. Now, what do you mean by livres? Livres was the currency of that time in France. Now, according to all this, there were also substantial crises. There was bad harvest, there was bad weather condition, which led to food shortage, poor harvest, and the bread, which was a staple food, the prices skyrocketed. The third estate had to bear the burn. So, in short, empty pockets plus hungry stomach equals to perfect recipes for a revolution. Try that once. Not really though. Coming on to the part 2, where we see the key events and the impact. Now let's talk about the major events that shaped the revolution. First, we had the Estate General meeting. The king had called a meeting to raise the taxes. Now, already the third estate were poor, but he wanted to raise taxes because he wanted to live in luxury. Now, what happened here was, in this Estate General meeting, one person from per estate, known as the Estate General, was called in the meeting hall, and a decision was taken through votes. So, one vote per estate. But the thing was, the first and the second estate had 300 people each, whereas the third estate alone had 600 members. So what happened was, it was unfair to the third estate because the votes always were taken against them. So when third estate people were not listened to, they demanded rights. But when they were ignored, they walked out and they had formed a National Assembly. In the National Assembly, they had taken the tennis court oath, where they had locked out of their hall. They met on a tennis court and they swore not to separate until France had a constitution. Next, we have the storming of Bastille. Now, storming of Bastille was again, which was covered in the first topic. Bastille was stormed, cities placed in alarm, everything. Now we have a region of terror. Under this, we have Maximilian Robespierre, and all of these people who were executed by a guillotine. Guillotine was a system by which they used to place the person, like lie down the person on a machine, and their head used to get chopped by the machine. Excuse me. Let's look at some important figures which were involved. We had King Louis XVI, Maximilian Robespierre, and of course, Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette is the wife of King Louis XVI. Now, King Louis XVI, of course, the absolute monarch who had lost his crown and his head as well. Marie Antoinette, she was the queen and the wife of King Louis XVI, who was known for spending a lot of money. Then we have Maximilian Robespierre, who was known for the radical leader behind the Reign of Terror. Let's look at the consequences and the global influence. Now, the revolution had shook the world. Absolute monarch was over. France became a republic, and the ideas was liberty, equality. Excuse me. All these ideas had spread over across Europe, and they had inspired revolutions worldwide. Through this, we'll also look into the Russian Revolution in the next chapter. The National Assembly had made big decisions, and they had abolished federal privileges. By federal privileges, what I mean was, federal privileges are ones given by birth. So these are the one privileges that the first and second estate got by birth. There were also, we see that women have a revolution. Of course, women in themselves, they played a huge role in French Revolution. They marched to Marseilles demanding for bread, which was the staple diet for food to feed their families. They formed clubs, they demanded education, equality. However, women didn't get the same rights as men at still times, but their action planted the seed for future struggle of women's rights. Now, the French Revolution just wasn't one single event. It was a series of struggle that led to change in the world. It ended monarchy and fought for rights. Now, they gave us powerful ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. These ideas are still alive in democracies around the globe. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any doubts, do drop them in the comment section and I'll be sure to answer this. Credits go to Slides Go for making this PPT. Thank you.